Welcome to episode 8 of the Namespace podcast. I'm Derek, and I'm here with my co-host Jordan. And today we are going to be reacting to the Stack Overflow Developer Survey from 2020.
Yep. Yeah, we get excited about this survey every year. And because the results just came out, we figured might as well share our thoughts on them while it's relevant.
Right? But it's been a minute. So let's do a quick life update. What have you been up to
during
lockdown and, the end of the world?
Yeah, like we did release an episode last week, assuming we release this one this week. And
we will.
But we did record that one before quarantine, and I just took forever to edit it. So this is our first time recording in a while. And I got a cat, so I've been really busy making her feel loved, mostly. I
don't know what that's like. I don't have cats.
Yeah. Well, I keep just getting her new toys because she's like an attention hog. She just wants my attention. Sure. So I'm like, oh, play with this.
It sounds like a pet. That's why I don't have them.
Sounds like a pet.
That's why I don't have them.
Yeah. And Derek's been over here getting famous online with his developer articles, which are really great. I mean, we've posted about them on the Namespace social media. So definitely check them out. Like, really great content.
Thank you for saying that.
Yeah.
I am Dev 2 famous, I guess we can call it. But yeah, a Pythonic guide to solid design principles has a little over 10,000 hits at this point, which is awesome. And then I just released a test-driven approach to Python packaging. So we're going to see how that goes. But I was very proud of that one because I finally sat down and understood Python packaging and what's happening when. So that was more just I needed to do this in a personal vendetta that I've finally finished.
Yeah.
But next up is going to be Nobody Likes a Dry Pastry. That's right. And that's a technical article. Yeah. Not about cooking.
Yeah, I'm excited for that one. That'll be good. I mean, I quote, like, don't repeat yourself dry a lot in code reviews and stuff. So I think it'll be good to have kind of a deeper dive into what that really means. And
why it doesn't matter.
I mean,
this is my vendetta against dry. This is why I explained people have been too dogmatic about dry.
Well, we can get to that because it's like, don't be too dogmatic. But if you're not being too dogmatic about it,
it's fine.
Then it's
fine.
like, don't be too of anything because it's too of that thing.
Just wait till we get to, oh God, the analogy that goes with this article. I'm so excited.
Yeah. Well, anyway, definitely check out those articles. But yeah, let's get to the survey. So the first interesting stat we wanted to talk about is the coding as a hobby stat, because as developers who try to spend a lot of our time outside of work learning, we were happy to see 78.3% of developers also spend their time outside of work learning. And maybe not. Yeah, if you're coding as a hobby, you're learning stuff as you're coding. So
yeah, for sure. That's why you should do it.
That's the whole point.
This one kind of jumped out to me. It was either the first or the second developer conference I went to. The company I was working with basically sent all of their developers to it, and they asked everybody that went to kind of give a bullet point of what they learned or picked up from the conference. And the one I shared that I didn't realize was going to be such a gem was having a hobby makes you a better developer. And I saw that because of all of the people who were doing their talks based on just some hobby they had. Like, one guy was writing frameworks and software and open sourcing them for a home brewing machine that he had. One guy had a computer vision open source project that would look at your cell phone and it would actually play mini games for mobile games and stuff like that. And so it just really stood out to me. It's like, having those hobbies and coding for those hobbies makes you a much better developer. And then to see this in the survey was, really interesting, really exciting, because we want to see people be better developers.
Yeah, exactly.
I like that one a lot.
Yeah. And then I guess the other side of the coin is like, it is difficult to code outside of work. I mean, we've all got our own lives. We got a lot of stuff going on. And, you know, if you want to be the best developer, but you also want to be the best rock climber, and you also want to be the best DJ, and you also want to be the best podcaster, it gets challenging. But yeah, it would be really good to just have a little bit of discipline and work some coding as a hobby into your schedule, even if it's just a little bit. But I guess the other interesting stat, coding as a hobby related, was that Stack Overflow released the coding as a hobby by gender. So if we are just looking at the US not weighted, 77.9% of people are coding as a hobby. But if we weight that by gender, then it's 76.5% are coding as a hobby. And the reason they have to do that is because it's like, I don't remember what the stat is, but like 13%, or okay, that might be really low, but like under 50% of the people who took the survey are women. So that's why they do the weighted thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like we talked about in the fixing the gender wage gap episode, because like the female of the household stereotypically is doing more household chores and has more things to take care of outside of work, like after work and relation to kids or cooking. The child
rearing, the home taking kind of tasks.
Yeah. So we thought like that kind of falls into that same category from something we've already talked about. So we figured we'd bring that up. Cool. And then years since learning to code is another interesting stat here.
This one for me.
Yeah, go ahead. So you can look at it.
Yeah, so I have aspirations, and I got to cheat off of Jordan's laptop and look at the notes because she takes notes and I don't.
Well, I take them for both of us.
Yeah, appreciate it. So anyhow, this one's really interesting to me. As we mentioned, I'm doing a lot of the technical articles. I'm launching a YouTube channel. I have a coding academy that I'm going to be doing a trial run of.
Yeah, Derek's been so busy.
I can't stand sitting around.
Yeah.
Nobody can stand sitting around. Ha! Whoa. See what I did there? Puns.
That was good.
But for me, this is really interesting because it was almost 50% of developers have less than 10 years of experience since learning to code. And that's not even factoring out who's just doing it for a hobby and who's doing it professionally. Mm-hmm. But then when you go into the professional developers, you still have about 40% of developers that have under 10 years of experience. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of right in that niche of the kind of people I want to mentor and be teaching. It's not, I'm going to teach you how to program. I'm going to teach you how to master the craft of programming. That's really the interest I have. And that's what we want to do here too.
Yeah.
This is, okay, I'm going to tell another story. I apologize. When I was, when I was a young student, getting a business degree at the time, I had a math tutor that would nitpick about my integral symbols. He says they look like S's, not integral symbols. And I was like, dude, like, why do you care? And he said, because you're so good at the math now, you need to work on the style. And that was a really impactful statement to me because like you can code and you can be really good at coding, but then you can start on the style and you can take it to that next level and pay attention to just that much more detail. And so that's kind of been like a driving thing behind all of the teaching that I'm trying to do. Is I'm not trying to teach you the basics. I'm trying to teach you how to do the basics better or the advanced stuff.
Yeah.
And so that for me, that was just like, oh, this is building the case that what I wanted to do is actually necessary.
Yeah. I mean, and I think like, besides it being like a high in demand sort of thing, I think it's also a low in supply sort of thing. Like, cause there's so many coding boot camps for people who are learning to code, so many courses online for people. Sorry, I have to.
Oh, unprofessional, Jordan.
I should have just let it buzz in my
No,
pocket.
You should have answered it and been like, hey, this is the Namespace podcast. You're on live. That would have been epic. Okay, I'm sorry.
The audio quality. Anyway, so yeah, it's like there's so many coding boot camps for people who are learning to code, so many like online courses to teach a specific programming language or a specific framework, and all of that's good. And you can find articles about solid or about test-driven development or about some of the more like advanced theory stuff that you might want to get into. But I think like a whole course just to take you to that next level is something that, I mean, I haven't searched for personally like online. I mean, I just find like little articles when I want to, but it's not something I've seen before.
Yeah. So right now, and she's where you're going to have me give away my whole business plan. So right now you have boot camps and formal education, college degrees that you take because you don't know what to take. You're like, well, I want to get into this, and that's a great way to do it because that's the only way I know how. And they just teach you to do stuff, and they lack that. They lack teaching the finesse, or they go at such a breakneck pace that you don't actually pick up anything. You're like, well, okay, I wrote an API that has middleware and authentication and rate limiting, and it has an offline worker to resize images, and it's using MongoDB and blah, 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 blah. And it's like, oh, okay, but you did that in 8 weeks. Like, did you really pick up Mongo and the language and putting it in Docker and RabbitMQ? And so this, I think, is going to bridge the gap of boot camps and formal education that teach you just the basics, but not why. And then the people that continue on from that and seek to master the craft. Instead, I want to take the mastering of the craft and bake it into the initial learning process. And then you can expedite and do these courses cheaper. We're going to stop talking about this because I'm revealing far too much.
Well, it does tie into a lot of the stats that we're going to hit later on too. Right. So it'll be good to have some context there for why we find these things really interesting. But yeah, years coding professionally. I mean, we're hitting the same sort of points here.
And so this one specifically, everybody that knows me knows I'm a huge fan of Uncle Bob, or Robert Martin. And in a couple of his talks, he gives this lovely history lesson of how the number of developers has evolved. And we're basically in this exponential increase where every 3, or no, it's every year we're doubling, or every 3 years we double, which leaves us at 50% of our developers have less than 5 years of experience at any given time. I can't remember the exact number he gives out, but this one absolutely confirmed it because 65% have less than 10 years of experience. So that exponential curve may be slowing down, but it's still very much a problem for the immediate future.
Just curious, why is it a problem? Do you think that the job market is not growing as quickly?
So back to that whole taking the mastering of the craft and baking it into the initial learning process. The initial learning process teaches you to write code. It doesn't teach you to write clean code. It doesn't teach you to write maintainable code. And so you have these young developers that go out and they can do really well on these academic interviews at awesome corporations, and they get the jobs there. But then you are woefully inequipped to actually make significant contributions. And you are contributing to technical debt.
I see what you're saying.
What you really want to do is train up people who, when they enter into the workforce, are paying down technical debt and adding to it at a lesser level. And so I've worked on a bunch of different teams at this point, and every single time I walk into just this cluster of technical debt, and it's like, well, how did this happen and what happened? And so that's why it's a problem, is that there's not enough people that want to do the teaching and not enough mentoring that's going on to fix this issue of technical debt. And then you have the people that are going to say, well, what's wrong with it? Look at all the cool and awesome things we've built. Like SpaceX just launched 2 people stumbling over my own words, but they just launched 2 people to the International Space Station. They have technical debt, but we can still do these awesome things. Why is it such a big deal? And the point there is, imagine how much more we could have done.
Yeah. And I think to that point, just a random tidbit to help with that, I think implementing very detailed code reviews is so helpful to kind of teach people with a very specific context in mind. I think that if companies weren't rushing so fast, then the senior devs on the team could be more patient as long as the junior devs are willing to listen and like comment all over those code reviews and teach them. But anyway, there's also, like you said, a lack of people willing to teach. So it's not just a lack of time. Sometimes it's a lack of willingness to be patient with that person.
Willingness and ability. So I work with 2 phenomenal developers that can just go in and crush any problem and then just like, okay, here we go. We fixed it. Yeah. It's like, okay, hold on. How did you know to do that? And then it's just like, they throw out those blurb of words. I'm like, I have no idea what you're saying. Like, I don't understand that technology that well. I don't understand the infrastructure. How did you just walk through and be like, oh yeah, it's this VPC ID that's wrong? And they want to teach, but they are not good at teaching. And so it's not just the willingness, it's the ability to teach as well. And it's not meant for everybody. Like, if you are not a teacher, don't think that you need to change your entire way of working to be a teacher. But if you are a teacher and you are not teaching, try it out.
Yeah. And even if you don't consider yourself a teacher, you can always build that skill. And we've talked about it. We will have an episode on recommendations for teaching coding at some point. So stay tuned.
Join my academy. Okay, I'm sorry. Go on.
Yeah, we'll make an official announcement sometime about that. Anyway, so the next topic, which we have so much more to go through, but
it's okay.
Okay, educational attainment. This one is super interesting. So the all respondents versus professional developers looks pretty much the same. Professional developers have slightly more education attainment, which is expected. It's just a little bit of a difference. But if we're looking at all respondents, 46% have a bachelor's degree, 23% have a master's degree. And then after that, we've got those are the 2 biggest chunks. We do have 12% of people that are having some college or university, which in the all respondent section is a lot of people that are probably just still in school, right?
Probably.
But you do see both in the professional developers and all respondents, there are a pretty good chunk of people out there. I said pretty good. I mean, what does this look like to you? 15% of people in the professional.
Yeah, I would give it about 12%.
So 12% of people don't have degrees, which is interesting. I mean, that to me sounds about right. I mean, that seems like what I would have expected. But then do you have anything else you want to say about that?
No. Again, market share for me, people are, and in good numbers, are pursuing formal training for programming. Mm-hmm. And so there is a big market there that I want to buy it out of. Yeah.
And there's a few different educational attainment related stats that we're going to go through that kind of build on each other in a cool way. So anyway, the next educational attainment stat we're going to look at is majors. So 62% have computer science, computer engineering, or software engineering majors. No surprise there. And then the next few in a row would be other engineering disciplines, information systems, information technology. Next one is a natural science, which is like me.
Yeah.
So 4% of people who took the survey have a natural science degree. I'm part of that. So that's pretty sweet.
And one of those in the natural sciences is physics. And,
yeah.
that was actually well advertised in the physics department of my university. Is one of the things that most physics grads do is go into software development.
Yeah. I actually started as a physics major. Did you know that?
No, it's new. You should have stuck with it. Physics is awesome.
It's cool. I felt like I was doing the same. Looking at the coursework, it seemed like I was doing a lot of similar things over and over. I don't know. I ended up doing biochemistry because I had already taken a bunch of physics courses my first year, and I was like, well, now I can take some biology and chemistry. I don't know. I was just
you wanted something easier. I get
it. Maybe a little bit. I'm good at math, but anyway, I'm a computer science nerd now.
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, after that, like now we're getting to like the 3% and stuff and below, but after that's math, and then lower down the line we've got business disciplines, social sciences, fine arts, health sciences. All of that makes sense, especially health sciences being all the way at the bottom. Like if you go all the way through medical school and then you decide you don't want to do that, that's a lot of time.
Right. Where were lawyers actually? Was lawyers on there at all?
I don't see it listed
specifically. It's okay. I get it. Words are hard.
Do you think it would be a business discipline? They might have just chunked them in there.
Maybe, but okay. So Stack Overflow, if you're listening next year, I would love for a breakdown on lawyers, because we have all of these issues that crop up every year about privacy and technology and how social media companies are they platforms? Are they publishers? Who knows? Lawyers transitioning into technical space or technical space transitioning into lawyers would be a very interesting stat, because clearly there's some sort of discrepancy there. And so knowing that specific number, I would be interested in knowing it. And clearly Stack Overflow just makes their survey for my own personal interest, because they did a great job this year. So keep it up.
Yeah. Yeah, cool. So I do like that one. I mean, again, it's a little bit expected, but it's fun for me because I'm part of that group that's more of a minority here, like not having the computer science degree. I do have a minor.
Because women who code isn't a minority already.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it is, but still, it's a fun stat.
Fair enough.
Okay, so this one is where it gets really interesting, I would say, formal education importance. So basically what happens here, I guess let's just talk about the all respondents first, because it's a little bit more generic, but 10% of all respondents think it's critically important. 24.5% think it's very important. But that's pretty low. After that, like 26% of people think it's fairly important. 23% say somewhat. It's
a pretty standard distribution if you look at it.
Yeah. And then 16% think it's not at all important.
The real interesting part to it was when you flip over to professional developers, all of the numbers on like critically very important or fairly important drop. And so it's like once you get into the workforce, all of a sudden you start discounting what your education was worth.
Exactly.
And again, stat perfect for me, because you're taught how to do things, but not why to do things. Mm-hmm. And so then you feel very inequipped to perform those duties in the workforce. And I've been known to say it is that knowing what I know now, I wouldn't go back and get my 4-year degree. But the whole point is I wouldn't have known what I know now without that.
Yeah.
So...
yeah, exactly. I've been talking to some people lately about whether or not, actually just one person messaged me if he should go back to school for CS because he's interested in it. And what I was, kind of my response there was like, if you do go back to school, every single class you take, you have a professor who's knowledgeable, TAs who are knowledgeable, a group of people learning the same thing as you at the same time. So just having that community is really good whenever you're trying to figure things out, because if you're doing it alone, if you're like learning CS on your own, you better have a really great mentor, somebody who's like willing to spend time helping you work through things and debug things.
Yeah. When you don't know, you don't know.
Yeah. You don't even know what to Google sometimes whenever
the first time you have to post a form from a website to an API and you don't know to ask about multi-part form data, you're just like, oh, how do I group multiple fields in this request? And it's like, you're just barking up the wrong tree and you just don't know that you're not doing it right.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's the biggest thing. The reason I would say that school does have value. It's like technically you can learn all those things on your own. It does provide you a curriculum as well. Like if you're learning things on your own, it might be difficult. Well, what should I learn? Having a curriculum is good. That being said, it's like there is a lot of value that's missing there. And I think one of the things that's missing might be feedback, actually. It's like teachers for my CS classes, it seems like a lot of the time you're being graded on whether or not your program executes and gives the right output, but nobody actually reads your code and gives you feedback on whether or not you could have done it in a different way that made more sense, or if something you did was confusing. And that's like the thing that code reviews are helpful for that.
And I understand why schools don't.
I understand it too.
It's not scalable.
It's not.
And, but it is something that I have an idea for with the Codificare Academy. Okay. So it's something I want to try to fix. I do. I have lots of ideas.
I do think like if you are a person who's in school for computer science, though, I do think that you have the right to go to your professor or TA and be like, hey, can you look at this code with me and tell me what you would change? I mean, if they're not doing that by default for every student, I think that you can still be that student that goes the extra mile to ask that question. And I think that that's something that would be very helpful.
Yeah, go for it.
Anyway, yeah, it is.
Let's move on, though.
Yeah, it's an interesting section, but we shall move on. Okay, and then again, a gender-related section, which ties back to our first assumption that actually, no, this doesn't tie it back to that one. I think this is a new thing anyway.
Well, no. So we got into the topic of when you do the weighted by gender, the years of coding professionally drops. And so this stat kind of ties into that.
That's what this is.
Well, yeah, but we kind of alluded to it in the first one.
Oh, okay.
And so, yeah, in this, it's a more significant drop. And I don't remember what the actual stat is that you pulled here, but so basically our evaluation was, it probably means there's more women in the learning to code section or space right now going through their education. Yeah.
So that's basically, it's like if you're looking at all respondents for this survey, there's a little bit more women than if you look at professional developers. So yeah, more women entering the workforce right now, which is cool.
Yeah. Or will be in a few years if they're in school now.
As the goal. And then, the experience and gender shows the same thing. There are less. There are more women
that have less experience.
Exactly.
So the big one there is the 5 to 9 years category. 29.2% of men had 5 to 9 years.
35.
5% of women had 5 to 9 years. And that is the surprising one. So there's like a bubble of women in tech.
Yeah, actually, and then the less than 5 years as well is a big difference. 15% of men are less than 5 years. 25% of women are less than 5 years. And we're talking about 25% of women who responded to the survey.
Right. And so there you go.
There's more women entering the workforce right now than women that have been in the workforce. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's cool. All right, sweet. Well, that's like the section.
That's the developer profile section. The demographics, basically. Those were just our key points that we wanted to pick out, mostly for me, and making the business case for starting my own coding school, because there's not enough of those already.
This is going to be different. It's going to be completely new.
It's pretty radically different.
Okay, so now we're going to hit the technology section, which is super
the fun stuff.
Yes. So first, we're going to talk about most popular web frameworks, which in Stack Overflow terms just means
most used.
Most used, yeah. So,
but for me, because I started as a C# developer, .NET Core is above the leading Java framework, Spring. Super excited to see that.
Yeah, that's exciting.
.NET Core being relatively new compared to Spring, it's rising up there. It's almost caught up with classic ASP.NET.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's that. And then if you're interested in what the top one is, it's jQuery, which makes sense just because there's like so many jQuery stuff out there. Yeah. But yeah, the ASP.NET being several levels higher than Spring kind of goes to show some Microsoft innovation, some Microsoft love happening.
Oh yeah. I want to talk about that.
Yeah.
Several times.
So let's look at other frameworks, libraries, and tools where .NET and .NET Core are
right up there underneath Node.js.
Yeah. So
and then the top gaming one, Unity 3D, that's Microsoft.
Yep. Xamarin,
they bought that, so I'm not going to credit them for that.
I do though. I mean, I think that this is a good point though, because there are definitely areas where Microsoft and Oracle are directly competing in like databases, web frameworks. I don't know what other stuff. Those are the two I'm thinking of.
Cloud. They both have a cloud platform. Yeah, they both have databases. They both have their own programming language.
Yeah, the programming language. And the cloud, I mean, Azure is super popular. And I had to ask Derek, I was like, does Oracle have their own cloud?
They do, yeah. I actually interviewed with Oracle to work on their cloud.
Okay.
Yeah. They didn't select me for the position, and even if they had, I wasn't going to take it.
Yeah, it's good to interview.
I'll put it that way.
It's good. No, it's good to interview. But you can see like Microsoft has Unity 3D and Xamarin. Like I do think that Microsoft they're
in more spaces.
Is kind of spreading out a little bit to some more interesting sectors, which makes them more popular because now they have a wider variety of people that are using their products.
Yeah, and they're just focusing on user experience.
Yes, I mean that's and open source, kind of embracing open source. No,
they bought open source. They bought GitHub. They bought open source is what they did.
Okay, so not just embracing, they bought GitHub. I actually didn't know about that.
What? You didn't know about that? Oh.
I don't pay that much attention.
It's okay.
Okay, I shouldn't say that on the podcast. I don't want to reduce my credibility. I research for the things that we're going to talk about.
Yes.
I try not to talk about the things that I don't pay attention to.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure NPM was bought by GitHub. And so I think that's wrapped up under Microsoft, which means a whole lot of the Node.js space is wrapped up in Microsoft, which makes sense because Visual Studio Code is an Electron app, which is Node.js. So,
Man,
basically,
you just have a map in your head.
We can say those top three. It's interesting to me how those things go. I think the history of how it evolves is important and tells us a lot.
Yeah.
But let's get to my favorite stat.
Okay. So now we're going to hit most loved, dreaded, and wanted languages.
Yes.
So I will just let Derek take over for his most favorite stat because it would be rude of me not to.
Oh, that's so sweet of you.
Yeah.
So somebody actually mentioned to you, like, what's my issue with PHP? It's
yeah.
I don't actually have an issue with PHP. It's just easy to write crap code in PHP. But this one here, and I think in a technical episode, I went into how I think Java is a dying language in the next 10 years.
Yeah, and also in the programming languages to learn episode.
Did I? Okay. I love to hate on Java.
Yeah.
But for the first time, C# has jumped over Java. C# has been in the top 10 most loved languages, and it's still there. But Java has dropped out of the top 10 most loved, and it's on the top 10 most dreaded as the 9th most dreaded programming language, confirming my belief that Java is a dying language.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to tie into what we were just talking about, where Microsoft is in a lot more spaces, but they're also doing some more innovative things. And if you're going to look at Microsoft versus Oracle, which are the companies, Microsoft, of course, responsible for C# and Oracle responsible for Java, you see a different level of investment into the language, with .NET Core and Azure and anyhow, I think because of that, and C# I see as the primary competitor to Java. Java's just quickly sliding down the hill, and we're going to get to the point where we're talking about how much languages are paid for, and there's another point there I'm going to make, but just to keep you listening through all of this.
Yeah. And just so you guys know, in the Stack Overflow, something that Derek noticed, I didn't notice this, most dreaded is just the inverse of most loved.
Yeah.
Which
I don't know if it's that same thing every year, but this year, if you just flip the list around, you get the most dreaded.
Yeah, so you can kind of see how those stats relate.
Yep.
But
so another interesting one there is that TypeScript actually jumped over Python for most loved languages, or was it most wanted?
Most loved.
Okay. So it's kind of weird. Like, I've spoken to a lot of developers that use TypeScript and they love it, and I'd never have. But once again, TypeScript is a language that is backed by Microsoft.
Yeah.
And so you just see Microsoft like rising to the top in all of these things. And it's something that I expected for many years. I've been a fan of what Satya Nadella was doing there. And I am absolutely loving seeing Microsoft rise to the top again when everybody called me a Windows fanboy.
Yeah. I do like developing on a Mac, though, I've decided.
It's okay.
Yeah.
So do I.
And I guess the other thing about TypeScript and Python that's kind of interesting is so both have been very loved, and TypeScript just beat Python, which TypeScript is like, the strongly typed version of another very popular language.
So you have, JavaScript and a bunch of its variants, including TypeScript. They are all implementations of the ECMA script or ECMAScript specification. Just like Python is technically CPython. That is a C implementation of the Python spec. But you also have IronPython, which is a C# implementation.
I haven't heard of that one.
Yeah, so you have a couple of others, and then there's PyPy, which is another more popular one. I can't remember what that's written in. But anyhow, you have these specs, and then you have very similar languages that are implementations of that spec. And so that's the difference with TypeScript and JavaScript. They're different implementations of the same spec.
But it seems like maybe there's some preference. I mean, there in terms of TypeScript versus JavaScript, there's definitely a preference for TypeScript if you're just looking at the most loved. And then Python, which is weakly typed, is, I don't want to say it's losing popularity. I mean, it dropped like 0.5%
maybe. Okay, so we also have to talk about this. Because I've been calling Python a weakly typed language, and I actually did it in one of my technical articles, and somebody dropped in Python's a strongly typed language, and gave me a link to some documentation. I looked at it and I was like, okay, hold on. I got to rethink this whole weakly strongly typed.
I guess.
So the definition of weak and strong type that we're using there is a strongly typed language is when a variable becomes a type, that variable doesn't change its type. The value can change type. And so in TypeScript, once it's an int, it's an int.
And the other big difference is like the static versus dynamic typing, I guess. But that's a whole nother thing.
Yeah. Strong and weak versus static and dynamic is they're not absolutely tied together because C# and Java both have ways of doing dynamic typing.
Oh, I didn't know that. I thought that they were just static. Anyway.
So, but to that point, there seems to be this preference with not doing the kind of type juggling stuff that made PHP, JavaScript, and Python kind of popular at times, and it made it easier to get started with them because you didn't have to worry about it. But then you realize if you just ignore it, you can get yourself into really bad places. Mm-hmm. And that's the issue that I have with PHP.
Yeah.
Is people are like, oh, this is great. Oh, you can just ignore it. And it's like, well, you can't. Not if you're going to build something sustainable. You can't.
Yeah. I mean, it's like with Python, if there's a module or like a class that's getting made that's going to be used a lot, if it's important, it's like, I really prefer type hints. I just think that it's a better a better way to document your code so that other developers know how to use it and everything. So it's like, I don't know. I wonder if kind of the dynamic and weak typing trends might be kind of falling off. We'll see. I think we're going to have to, look at some over the years stats to see some of these trends. But one interesting over the years one is going to be to see if over the years less and less developers have degrees just because of the stuff we were talking about earlier. But
yeah, could be.
Yeah. Very cool. So let's talk about frameworks. Most loved, dreaded, and wanted frameworks. Actually, we're just going to talk about most loved.
Because it's .NET Core.
Yeah. So Derek, huge Microsoft fanboy. We've got .NET Core.
No. You can't call it being a fanboy.
Why?
Because there are legitimate reasons why it is popular, and I have just recognized those reasons. That's not being a fanboy. Being a fanboy is, oh my gosh, they released a new Windows phone. I know I just bought one last week, but I have to have the new one.
Okay.
That's being a fanboy, and I am not one of those.
Well, you can make that distinction. That's fine. I won't call you a fanboy.
Good.
I still kind of think okay, never mind. You're not a fanboy.
Okay.
I'm just kidding. Okay, so yeah, .NET Core, 70% of people love it who've used it.
So one thing we do have to talk about for the most dreaded web framework, though, was Angular was the most dreaded.
At the top, most.
But
dreaded.
it was also the third most popular. Web framework, which of course in that context was most used. But then React.js, which was the second most used, is the second most popular. It's just under .NET Core. So I think we're going to see React.js really starting to eclipse Angular.
Yeah, and right under React, though, is Vue.js. I mean, both of those are very, very closely very loved frameworks. And I've used React. I have not used Vue. But the team I'm on right now does have a Vue app, and it looks like we're going to be making some updates to it soon. So maybe I'll be able to kind of do some comparisons there. But apparently both of them are really loved. So
fill me in. I've never used Vue.
Yeah, I will if I actually touch it.
That's fair.
We will see. Okay, so then...
Okay, so I'm sorry. This is my favorite stat now.
You keep changing.
The most loved database. Well, okay, so the other ones were very lovely because they were, confirming what I've been saying for years.
Yeah.
This one, though, I love because the most loved database is not a database. It's Redis. Redis is a caching service. It's a key value storage. It's not a database.
Yeah.
Don't use it as a database.
I mean, like we were talking about it. It's like, yeah, I guess Stack Overflow wants a Redis related stat, this kind of makes sense as a place, but then it ends up as most loved, and now it's weird because it's not even a database.
It's okay. I just thought it was fun.
Yeah.
But Redis is our Lord and Savior. And so it's no surprise that Redis is at the very top.
Yeah, it's no surprise.
And for everybody that doesn't get the joke about Redis being our Lord and Savior.
And nobody will unless you are on our development team.
So when I was working with Jordan, I was given a task. And really the only requirements were things need to drop offline, and it's very important that the online offline status is kept within a 5-minute interval and to use Redis. So I looked into it and I was like, okay, listen, Redis is really difficult with this. Let's not do Redis. I'm like, here's a DynamoDB implementation, a MongoDB implementation, a Postgres implementation, and a Redis. Let's use any one of these besides Redis. And then they're like, well, how about let's rework the Redis one? And I was like, okay, we reworked Redis again. And I rewrote this Redis implementation like 2 or 3 times before they're like, okay, let's do DynamoDB. That makes way more sense. It's like, thank you.
Yeah.
But the way I coped in daily stand-ups was to refer to our Lord and Savior Redis.
Yeah.
And that's not to knock Redis at all. I still love it. It's very easy to work with, but it's not a database and it was not doing what we needed to do.
Yeah, I definitely like on my team right now, we might be making an implementation for using Redis as like a queuing sort of thing, and it's like I feel super wary. Well, we've talked about it a lot, and I think it's a good idea for what we're trying to use it for, but just because of how Redis is our Lord and Savior, it has to work.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, it'll work. Redis is very versatile, but but
just not for.
Gotta be okay with data loss.
Yeah,
gotta be comfortable with data loss and rebuilding it from scratch.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's settings that you can change.
Nope. That's why we didn't use it. I don't even need to hear the sentence. Just no.
Okay, because I was like looking into it because I was curious, and I thought it seemed like there might be some settings that you could change, but then it doesn't. But then it's just not even. You're not getting the performance improvements anymore from caching, and it's like anyway. Redis is our Lord and Savior. Do not. I hope nobody gets offended by that.
They're not. They're not.
They should know. Anyway, so another interesting database related stat, MongoDB is the top of most wanted. So just most I guess the database that most developers want to learn. And
I interpreted that as like job descriptions have the requirement of this. And so I saw that as companies want people to know MongoDB.
Yeah, we can fact check that. The thing is, that was my initial assumption as well, but I read something that I think changed my mind. So let me check.
Honestly,
it's important.
Now that I've said it out loud, it makes more sense what you're saying because your standard SQL databases are gonna be more in demand just because it's been around longer. But okay, you actually pulled up the survey, so tell us.
Yeah, so wanted means percentage of developers who are not developing with the language or technology but have expressed interest in developing with it. Okay,
then you're right.
Yeah, I mean, I guess Stack Overflow, if you're listening, I do think that would be a cool stat because Stack Overflow has a job site and, they're doing this survey. I don't know. I guess the survey could be actually, because it's a survey, might as well collect data from employers, like people who are interviewing people who are looking for developers on what they're looking for. I think that could be pretty cool. And it could be like, what technologies are you looking for? But maybe also like what soft skills or like I think that would be pretty interesting to know what the hiring people are looking for who take the survey. I don't know. I guess mostly developers are taking it, but you can see there's like engineering managers and stuff taking the survey. If you look at the developer
and we're
going to
get to it when we get to the work section.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. we had to skip some stuff because we are providing a lot of commentary here.
That's fair. I mean, there's a lot to provide commentary on.
Yeah, there's a lot of info. Okay, so this
but
one's
the next one, we got to talk about this because I hinted at it, is the top paying technologies, which for like worldwide, not specific to the US, Perl is the highest paid language, which I found funny because, again, Uncle Bob in one of his talks says that we're all eventually going to give up and become Perl programmers because it's the language that won't die. I've written Perl once, and it was like, okay, it was a fun task, but other than that, I know nothing. But the other really interesting part to this was in the US, Scala is the highest paid language.
Yeah.
Clocking in at $150,000, which, buy yourself a Ferrari at that point.
Yeah, that's good.
But Scala is on the JVM, which is what made Java so popular. And it is the kind of functional paradigm version of Java. And so because Scala is going to be attracting all of these people that know the JVM up to these high paying jobs, they're just going to cast Java away. And Scala is capable of doing object oriented as well as functional. But again, I think that's just another nail in the coffin for Java.
Yeah. And so, Scala is highest paid in the US at $150K. It's actually tied for Perl globally. So Scala is also highest paid globally,
Oh, okay.
Tied with Perl.
I missed that.
Yeah.
This is why you take notes.
Yeah. But the other interesting thing, I mean, just think about that. Highest paid globally is 76K. Highest paid in the US is 150K. That is just a huge difference. I mean, I knew that devs in the US got paid a lot. I did not know there was that big of a difference.
And it wasn't broken down by like where these languages are being used.
Yeah, it wasn't.
But if you look, $76,000 in somewhere like Nigeria, which I know had a huge population of people that responded, it's still pretty good.
Yeah,
because it's all corrected for US dollars. So 76,000 in some of these countries where people were answering from is still really good.
Yeah, there's a very high price of living in like Silicon Valley and a lot of the places in the US where devs are living. But still, it is. I mean, that's the highest paid. I don't know. It's we can go into some of these other languages though, like Go is the second highest paid globally, which is, and then the next one is Objective-C, which we thought was a little bit interesting because Swift is much lower.
But it's the new language from Apple for all iOS development.
Yeah, so I guess
I've never done iOS development, so maybe you can tell me, can you still write Objective-C or?
Yeah, you can still make Objective-C apps, and I honestly don't know what the benefit would be to make an Objective-C app versus a Swift app.
Well, we're not mobile developers. So.
Yeah, I just made an app whenever
I'm going to ask Rob. Rob's got to come on the show because he is a mobile developer.
Yeah, we should bring him on. We've got a lot of people that we want to join us. We should actually start.
Yeah, we should. I agree.
Well, if they're comfortable. This still...
No, I don't care. We're just going to show up at their doors.
Yeah.
Where were you on the night of today?
So yeah, Python is actually pretty low here, comparatively.
It's still $120,000.
It's still $120,000 average.
And this is the US stat.
This is the US stat. It's just further down the list than many other languages, I guess. It's in the TypeScript, JavaScript range anyway. Yeah, I'll settle for $120K.
There you go. See? Problem solved. Solving the gender wage gap right there. You program this language? Here's your salary. No, that would be terrible.
Yeah, that would not work.
Oh, no, we'd have such crap code.
I would be very upset.
Okay, so moving on to the work section, though.
Yeah.
Because let's be honest, that's why we do this.
Final section. Okay, so they did have a little stat on overtime.
It happens. People work overtime. It wasn't that bad. Like maybe people are working
mostly 40 to 45 hours. That's what it was. So they didn't even give you an option for 40 exactly. So you don't even know if people are working overtime or if they're just working 40. But anyway, it didn't look as bad as I thought, actually. I thought that in the US there would be more overtime than there was. But it wasn't bad.
Yeah. I interpreted that as mandatory overtime. I think we all put in more time than that just on our own. I certainly do.
That was not how I interpreted it. Yeah, it's like if I'm just trying to figure something out, something's really bothering me, it's hard to gotta figure that out sometimes. But anyway, so onboarding. This is an interesting one.
This was interesting for me.
Interesting for me too, Derek.
Oh, that's right. You've run the gamut from onboarding. Okay, so selfishly for me, the onboarding. The question was basically, how good is the onboarding? Over half the developers said yes, it was good onboarding, but the other half was no, onboarding was not good, which I took as onboarding was present, but it did not help in getting you prepared to work on this team or that project. Mm-hmm. And then the last one, which was the comedy answer, was onboarding while onboarding, which is there is no onboarding whatsoever. They sit you down and there you go. Mm-hmm. And for me, and Coding Academy, all that good stuff, no, and onboarding while onboarding is one of those things that I think you bake into the teaching process of doing good documentation and tests and stuff like that will help with onboarding. So once again, just building the business case.
That's a good point.
But Jordan has had all three onboarding experiences. And so maybe you can talk about those for a minute.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. I've been onboarded to 3 teams and each experience was
within a year
different.
Yeah. Within a year.
Yeah, it's because I was consulting, so that's why I was moving around so much. I'm not a consultant anymore. Now I have a it's a contract. I'm hoping,
which is why we're gonna go into the consulting, contracting, and full-time podcast.
Yeah,
episode next time. That's our next podcast.
It is sneak peek. But yeah, so the onboarding. I can give a little bit of insight into my experience for each of these, which is fun. So like the onboarding that was helpful for me, that was when I was joining Derek's team. And it was pretty cool because basically it was like a day of Derek showing me and the other new person, here's how our stuff is laid out. Here's some diagrams. This is what we're building. This is why we're building it. Here's what it looks like. This is the problem we're solving.
And this is why the snakes are there. So it was just kind of like a personal introduction. It wasn't like, here's a video to watch this for the next 6 weeks, which I'll get to that. But yeah, I think that was a good introduction. It's like gives you the chance to ask questions, but you're not overwhelmed because it's just an intro. And then after that, I'm trying to remember what happened next. The next one was terrible.
Well, no.
It was like 3 months of onboarding.
Well, I meant more like what happened next on your team, because after that,
the way we measure it, and this is how the VP of engineering measured it, is, oh wow, they were able to get pull requests in their first and second days on the team. And
is that when we started that quickly?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So we just started.
Michael had his in the first day. You had yours in the second day because we ran into some environment problem.
Oh yeah,
I didn't know what was going on. But yeah, first and second day, and that's not. We've gone through onboarding, and now it's my first or second day. That is, I sat down in a chair at this office, and on my first day, I checked in code.
Yeah.
That is a good onboarding process.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, the thing is, it's like get a ticket and then just ask the questions that you need to ask to figure out how to get it done until eventually you've filled in your own gaps. Like you have to have somewhere to start. You have to have like the introduction, the broad idea of what's going on. But then, after that, I do think that it's better to fill in the gaps yourself by just asking questions. Because it's like, if somebody just tries to explain the whole thing to you, that's not all relevant for your first ticket.
So Yeah, you got to put up the guide walls.
Yeah.
So people know where they're operating and then they can explore the space.
Yeah. And then my second onboarding experience was so crazy to me. It was like literally 6 weeks of watching videos. There was a little bit of a coding situation, but it was weird because the instructions were pretty vague. It was basically like use this in-house framework to do a hello world type thing. But the framework didn't have documentation. So it's
and you weren't actually writing production code.
And we weren't actually writing production code. So yeah, it was a little bit, it was like, well, if I'm writing code, why don't you just make me write the real deal? That was kind of what I was thinking, and then the videos are crazy. But here's the thing, and I think that this is really interesting. I don't know if you know about this, Derek, but what I was told, I'm making all this as generic as possible.
Right, liability reasons.
What I was told was that this company basically did their own coding boot camp right when they were getting started. It's like a startup. And then hired everybody from the coding boot camp that did well. And the foundation for their entire system is written by people who had just graduated from a coding boot camp. And coding boot camps are good, but you also need senior devs. And the system lacked experience.
No, the system lacked system is what it lacked.
Anyway, so that's why the onboarding process was 6 weeks, because it wasn't an intuitive designed system. It was like, we have to explain this to you because nobody else has done it like this, because nobody else wanted to do it this way because they knew what they were doing.
Yeah, people failed to read code. And you should not be allowed to write code unless you can read code.
Yeah.
That's a topic for another day.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, and then the onboarding, what onboarding? I've also joined a team that there wasn't really much onboarding, but the thing is everybody was really busy, so it was kind of hard to like figure out what I'm supposed to do. And for me, it worked fine because, like I said, I'm kind of that type of person who I prefer to fill in gaps with my own questions. And I bother people to get that base understanding. Like I message somebody, hey, do you have half an hour today to explain this project to me? And I think that if you're in that onboarding scenario, if you are a junior developer and it's your first job, you're going to be like, somebody help me. I don't know. But if it's like your second job or third job, it's like you can, you know what you need to know. Like ask them, explain this project. Where are the repos? What are the rules for checking in code? And like, you can kind of figure it out yourself. But sometimes it's like a couple weeks in and then you're like, somebody's like, oh, you haven't set this up yet. And it's like,
I didn't know I was supposed to.
I don't know, but it's not a big deal. I think that the no answer is way worse than onboarding, honestly. I think bad onboarding is worse than no onboarding at all.
Yeah, I think so. Because bad onboarding is leading you down a wrong path.
Yeah.
Or it's confusing you. And
yeah, exactly. So anyway,
that's fair.
That's that. I've been talking. Let's go on.
Okay.
DevOps, which is fun topic. So
they were split pretty evenly, like 43% either way. Yes, there's a there's a dedicated DevOps team, or no, there's not a dedicated DevOps team.
12% said not sure, which is interesting, but
yeah. For me, again, it's an interesting topic because I work as a full stack developer. So DevOps, it kind of falls on my responsibility, but we also have a dedicated DevOps team.
Yeah.
But
it's kind of like me too right now. It's like we have shared Terraform stuff that we work with, and we have cloud people who are managing that code, but we also do have to check in code there.
Yeah. I found it interesting because DevOps is the highest paid field inside of programming. But that it's you basically have a place in DevOps, whether you're going to be dedicated to DevOps or I just need to know DevOps. So it's a great place to, if you're looking to augment your skills and to get to that next pay raise or that next level, like invest in learning some of the DevOps technologies.
Yeah, definitely.
And that's really what I took out of that one.
Yeah. And then the other like DevOps tidbit that I thought was interesting, while only 40% of people have a strong presence of a DevOps team, only 20% of people think it's neutral or not important. Like 80% of people think it's very important, critically important, or important, yet there is a lack of people who are dedicated to that skill. And yeah, I mean, the fact that it's expensive to have DevOps people is likely kind of plays into that. All right, sweet. So most important job factors we talked about on fixing the gender wage gap already. It looks pretty much the same,
except they removed salary.
Yeah.
One of the options, which I thought was really weird.
Yeah, we thought that was weird because we were like looking for it. So previously in other years, I guess we were looking specifically at 2018 when we did fixing the gender wage gap, but men had compensation as their highest, most important job factor. And now they do not offer that as a selection.
Yeah.
Which it's like, that seems a little bit, I'm curious why they took that out, because that seems like a very valid job factor.
Yeah, I think it was to point out that, like, if you could take salary out of it, imagine everybody was paid the same rate, whatever, what would be the next important things? And that's something that companies looking to do hiring can use.
I guess that's true. It's just a different stat now.
At some point, money runs out, but building good cultures, can go on and on and on.
Yeah.
You can always build a better culture. So that's why I interpreted they took it out. I know for me, like when I'm looking at a job, I don't care how good the culture is. If you're paying me some amount of money that I can't live on, like I'm not going to take that job.
Yeah, exactly.
So
like it's a part of it. We work to make money, essentially.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. All right. So we're getting to the community section, final section.
And there was, the final section that we covered.
I think it may have
it was the final section of the survey, but we only took one stat out of it.
2 stats.
2 stats? Okay, I'm sorry.
But yeah, there are only 2 of the stats we took out of it. So it's.
But once again, this I think was for me, and the big one was, how often do you participate in Stack Overflow? And by participate means like the voting of moderators, answering questions, asking questions, and you were at like 60 some odd percent that were like never to monthly.
Yeah.
And going back to some of the other points that I talked about with the Coding Academy is we need to have people that are giving back to the community. And that's how we raise all of these developers to a new level.
Yeah.
And so many developers just don't give back to the community, and that's just hurting us overall. And especially, I know senior devs that have never given back. Like, they don't even have a Stack Overflow account. They go there, they take the information, and they give nothing back. And besides bringing up, like, I think there's a moral and ethical issue with that as well, to a certain degree. It's, can you really be a senior developer if you're not giving anything back? That's almost part of the job description, is you have to be able to raise up the rest of the team. And if you can't do that, are you really a senior developer? So that to me was, I kind of knew it, but this confirmed it for me as, oh yeah, so few people actually give back.
Yeah. It's like, as a senior developer, you can write better code, write more code, push out stuff quickly. But if you're not training and mentoring and adding value in that way, you're really missing a huge, I guess, like benefit.
There's a huge section of value that you are not providing to the company.
Exactly. And as a person with, if you have that senior title, I'm supposed to mean you're a person with that knowledge. You really should be sharing it. I mean, that's kind of my perspective. And it kind of brings me to a point where something I've been thinking a lot about lately is that it bothers me when seniority status is tied to years of experience, because really seniority should be tied to the amount of value you provide to the team from my perspective. And also,
I actually think very differently.
Well,
it should absolutely be seniority is tied to years of experience, because that we call our seniors when they hit the age of 65. You're a senior now, and you've done nothing to quantify or qualify that, because the title of senior is absolutely arbitrary and useless.
The problem is that the title of senior developer generally means you're getting paid more.
No, yeah. Now, if you're going to say the title shouldn't be tied to some sort of pay range, 100% agree with that.
That's what I'm getting at, because typically that's kind of what you see online is junior developers going to get paid less, mid-level is going to get paid medium, senior's going to get paid more. But if that title is based on years of experience, then I think it's wrong, because I think that salary should be based on the value you're providing to the team. So that's to me where it gets a little bit frustrating, but
I'm just saying, let's take care of the problem at its root. Let's just not have those titles. You are a software developer, you are a software engineer, you're whatever.
Yeah.
And then you get to negotiate how much you're paid, and you get to build your case for, this is how I'm providing value to the team.
For sure. I'm for that.
So yeah, I think we kind of agree on the same.
We do.
Get rid of seniority titles.
Yeah. I think that would be the best solution for it. Anyway, the other community stat is whether or not the people who took the survey are members of another online community besides Stack Overflow. So 40% said yes. Derek thought it was kind of low. I mean, I agree. And we're talking about the whole idea that if you're a senior developer and you're not participating in online developer forums, or if you're not listening to namespace podcast or something like that, then
yeah. So for me, this was interesting because part of the academy is to build a community around it.
Yeah.
We've touched on it that Python gave people the title of Pythonista, gave them an identity within the space.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it's when you graduate the academy, I want you to have an identity of, this is the kind of developer I am. I've mastered the craft of sorts. And really is just people not feeling like they were a part of some other community. If you don't feel like you're a part of a community, you feel like you're part of just yourself. And we're stronger together, which then reinforces the whole, we need to be giving back to the community the more we know. And for me, that's why that one was interesting to me, is over half, 58% of people don't feel like they're part of an online community outside of Stack Overflow. And Stack Overflow is great. I use it all the time, and I contribute back to Stack Overflow. But over half of the developers not having someplace other than that for language or technology specific, I think is a bad thing. Yeah. Because that's where the best practices are going to be refined, and the knowledge is going to be shared. And overall, it's going to take that language or that technology from where it's at to the next level.
Yeah. I guess, So you're writing Dev 2 articles. So you're definitely a member of that online community. Yes. Just because I read the articles, I guess that kind of makes me a member. I don't know. What do you think?
Do you feel like you're a member of that?
That's a good question.
Community?
I really don't participate too much in it. I overlook it, but I think that I'm like that with a lot of my life.
I mean, that's fair. I guess for me,
I do want to participate more.
Yeah, I want to be in community with people. I'm a very social person.
Yeah. I did comment on your article. I don't know if you saw. It's okay. It was like the couple days ago. It was literally just...
Oh, no, yeah, you did. You did. Because somebody left a comment that confused me. And they never responded, and you tried to clear it up for them, which is so sweet of you.
Thank you.
But I still don't understand what they're asking. But anyhow, yeah, a comment like that of, hey, somebody was confused, and I'm going to try to offer explanation. Like, you're still giving back.
That's
Maybe you
true.
didn't help, but you were still trying to give back.
Yeah.
And, you shouldn't... how am I trying to say that? We shouldn't discredit you for not being successful at what you tried. Like, you tried. We shouldn't disqualify people from being developers because they tried and failed. Like,
you think I failed?
No. I'm just bringing up the point that
it's just funny.
You should be trying. Yes, you utterly failed, Jordan.
I failed.
How does that make you feel?
At my online comment on your article.
But besides the point is...
Yeah, I mean, Stack Overflow has the upvotes and downvotes for a reason. Not everybody's going to give the perfect right answer. It's about feedback and learning. Like, that's why you can comment on comments. Like, it's the community aspect.
And I think downvoting on Stack Overflow is not participating in the community. I think
really?
That's just hating and tearing down the community. If you downvote and you do not provide some sort of input as to why you are downvoting, you're not trying to make it better. You were just trying to destroy it.
I mean, downvote with a comment, but I think downvotes are good because the person who asked the question, if they get an answer that's wrong, you don't want the person who asked the question to think it's the right answer.
Yeah, but you want to teach the person who gave the wrong answer why it's wrong, so they don't go out and perpetuate a falsehood.
I agree on that. And this is like kind of a goofy one-off thing, but I feel like people are always really don't want to disapprove a pull request.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Nobody ever wants to do that. And it's in that same category of people being nice and not wanting to be rude, but also it's like...
No, we learn far more from failure than we do from success.
I mean, I don't think that people should take things so personally. I mean, it's like if that code can't be merged for some reason, I think there's a difference between not approving it, because there's improvements that you can see that could be made, but whatever. But if something is like wrong and it's going to break and you notice it, I'm just curious. I thought it might be nice to normalize disapproving it, because I always feel like really, I never do it. And I'm not saying that we should, but it's kind of that same scenario where it's like, don't take your code so personally, like be welcome to feedback. And
the bigger issue though is when you as a developer has seen something happen and you're like, this is bad, don't do it. But it's passing tests. It's not going to break the code. It's going to work. But 2 years down the road, it's going to be a nightmare to undo. And I had this situation where it's like, guys, I've seen it. I've seen that exact pattern. Don't do it. It's bad. It took a team of 10 engineers 16 weeks to undo that. Don't do it. And they're like, okay, we're going to do it because it's working. And I'm like, okay, go. And I tried to stop that pull request and I was overridden.
Yeah, I mean...
So that's where you're going to have the issue. But if something legit is going to break, like, no, you can't do that. That switches a post request to a get request, and that's going to break the API.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to complain about that.
Yeah, and it's like, I just think it's like a foolproof sort of way to make sure that something doesn't accidentally get... I don't know. Anyway, I think it's, we kind of got off topic, but we don't have any more stats. So
yeah, that's our reaction to it.
Yeah. I love
great
looking
survey.
at this
Keep
survey. Yeah, it's really fun. So hopefully you guys enjoyed listening to us talk about it. Go look at the numbers for sure, but it's not going to be as fun as listening to this episode.
And, you know, part of this, the last one, we want a community around the Namespace podcast.
Yeah.
So tweet at us, namespace_pod, email us namespace.pod@gmail.com. Insta is namespace_pod.
Yeah.
Facebook is namespace_pod. Like, we're everywhere.
Yeah. Well, Facebook just search Namespace Podcast. I don't remember what the...
Okay.
Anyway.
But regardless, like, did we miss something in our review? Is there something that you noticed or wanted us to expand upon? That it's part of why we're doing this. We want to build a community of, we don't know everything.
Yeah.
We're just trying to be the best devs that we can be. And we want you to come along on that journey with us.
Yeah. It would be a disservice to us if you disagreed with something, you thought we explained something wrong and then didn't tell us.
No, it's a disservice to the whole
development community. Yeah. So
you can disservice us all you want.
That's true. Well, but yeah, definitely. Cause, we would like to revisit episodes if we get enough feedback that we explained something poorly or, that we missed a point that would have really been helpful to discuss. So yeah, please be a part of the community. We'd love to interact with you guys more. Did you say the email?
I did. namespace.pod@gmail.com.
Okay. I was like zoning out. This is a late night episode for all of y'all who are curious. We never record this late.
Ever.
But yeah. So, I think we're done. Thank you guys so much for listening.
Tune in next time for consulting, contracting, and full-time work.
Yes. All right.
Have a good one.
See ya.